In Tanzania, there is a lake that turns animals into stone, not figuratively, not as a metaphor. Dead birds and bats become calcified statues, frozen in the exact moment of death, their eyes still open, their wings still spread, preserved like something out of a horror film. And the water that does this, it looks like something from another planet. A boiling red surface stretching across the valley floor, so toxic that almost nothing can survive in it. Stone animals frozen forever. But here is what makes this even more unsettling. By the end of this video, you will discover that the very thing that makes this like a graveyard for most life is the same thing that makes it one of the most important ecosystems on the entire African continent. The reason will genuinely shock you, because Lake Natron is not just a killer, it is a paradox. What you are about to learn will change how you think about danger, survival, and the boundaries of life itself. And it starts with a question nobody thought to ask until it was almost too late. Imagine standing at the edge of a body of water that looks like it is bleeding. That is Lake Natron. Located in northern Tanzania, near the border with Kenya, this shallow lake stretches about 57 kilometers long and 22 kilometers wide. But what makes it immediately terrifying is its color. The surface of Lake Natron is a deep blood red, not blue, not green, red, and sometimes orange, sometimes a violent pink. The color comes from cyanobacteria, salt-loving microorganisms that thrive in the lake's extreme alkaline conditions. These organisms produce pigments as a byproduct of photosynthesis, staining the water in hues that look more like a wound than a lake. Blood red water. The temperature of this water can reach up to 60 degrees Celsius. That is 140 degrees Fahrenheit, hot enough to cause serious burns on contact, and the pH level, it sits around 10.5. For reference, ammonia has a pH of about 11. Nature is not cruel, merely pitilessly indifferent. So you have a lake that is searingly hot, deeply caustic, and colored like something from a nightmare. But the true horror, that is what happens to the creatures that fall into it, and that part is even worse than you think. Now here is where this story crosses into something that feels impossible. In 2013, photographer Nick Brandt traveled to Lake Natron and found something along its shores that looked like it belonged in a museum of horrors. Calcified, dead animals, birds, bats, small creatures, all perfectly preserved, not decayed, not decomposed, turned to stone. Their bodies were coated in a hard shell of calcium carbonate and sodium bicarbonate, minerals deposited by the lake's extremely alkaline water. The process is similar to Egyptian mummification, but done entirely by nature. No human hands involved. The lake essentially embalms anything that dies in it. The high sodium carbonate content acts as a preservative, hardening tissues and locking them in place. Scientists believe that the reflective surface of the lake confuses birds during flight, much like how glass buildings cause bird strikes in cities. The animals crash into the water, and once submerged in that chemical soup, their fate is sealed. If that just blew your mind, hit like and subscribe, because the next facts are even crazier. Seriously, you are not ready for what this lake does next. Preserved in stone, because the calcification is only half the story. The real question is, why does this lake exist at all? If you thought that was disturbing, the origin story of this lake makes it even more unsettling. Lake Natron sits at the base of Al Doinio Lengai, one of the most unusual volcanoes on Earth. Its name means Mountain of God in the Maasai language, and it is the only active volcano in the world that erupts natrocarbonatite lava. Lava that is not like any lava you have ever seen. Most volcanoes produce lava at temperatures around 1000 degrees Celsius. Al Doinio Lengai erupts at around 500 degrees. Its lava is black when it flows, but within hours of exposure to moisture in the air, it turns white. It looks like the mountain is bleeding milk. The earth has music for those who listen. This unique volcanic chemistry feeds directly into Lake Natron. The minerals wash down through the surrounding watershed, delivering massive amounts of sodium carbonate and other alkaline compounds into the lake basin. The volcano has been poisoning this lake for thousands of years. There is no outlet. Water flows in but never flows out. It only leaves through evaporation, which concentrates the minerals further and further. The result is a body of water so caustic it can strip ink off printed material in seconds. But here is what nobody tells you about this geological death trap. Something lives in it, and not just survives, thrives. Let me pause here because this next part changes the entire picture. To truly understand how dangerous Lake Natron is, you need to understand what a pH of 10.5 actually means for living tissue. Burns, dissolves, kills. The pH scale runs from 0 to 14. Pure water is 7. Your blood is about 7. 4. Bleach is around 12. 5. Lake Natron sits at 10.5, which means it is roughly 1,000 times more alkaline than normal water. At that level, the water attacks organic material aggressively. It breaks down cell membranes. It denatures proteins. If you were to submerge your hand in Lake Natron for an extended period, the alkaline solution would begin to saponify the fats in your skin. Your body would essentially start turning into soap. That is not an exaggeration. That is chemistry. The same process was historically used to dispose of bodies. Alkaline hydrolysis. The water literally dissolves you. Dissolved. And yet, despite all of this, the lake is not empty. In fact, some organisms have adapted to not just tolerate these conditions, but to depend on them entirely. The extremophiles of Lake Natron are among the most remarkable life forms on the planet. And what they do there, it is the key to understanding the great paradox I mentioned at the beginning. Stop and think about this for a second. A lake that turns dead animals to stone is also the single most important breeding ground for an entire species. Lake Natron is where roughly 75% of the world's lesser flamingos are born, 2.5 million of them every year. They build their nests on the salt flats along the lake's edges, the very same flats coated in those deadly alkaline minerals. And this is not an accident. The flamingos chose this place precisely because it is so hostile. The danger is their defense system. The extreme alkalinity and scorching temperatures keep almost all predators away. No mammal wants to walk across those burning salt crusts. No bird of prey wants to fly over that reflective, disorienting surface. The flamingos essentially use a chemical weapon as a security fence. In the middle of difficulty lies opportunity. Their legs are tough enough to withstand the caustic water for limited periods, though even they suffer burns if they stay too long. The nests themselves are small mounds of dried mud and salt, baked hard by the equatorial sun. Death becomes life. This is evolution at its most brutal and beautiful. The deadliest lake on Earth is also a cradle of life, and that contradiction is about to get even deeper. Now, what I am about to tell you sounds impossible, but it has been proven. Inside the waters of Lake Natron, in temperatures that would cook most organisms alive, there are creatures thriving, not just surviving, actively reproducing. Life where life should not exist. Alkaliphilic cyanobacteria dominate the lake. These are the same microorganisms responsible for the lake's nightmarish red color. They have evolved specialized cell membranes that can regulate ion exchange even in extreme alkaline conditions. Their internal pH stays neutral even while floating in what amounts to diluted lye. They have built biological armor against the lake's chemistry, but it does not stop there. A species of fish called Alcalapia ladolabris actually lives in the slightly less extreme zones around the lake's hot spring inlets. These tilapia can tolerate water temperatures up to 45 degrees Celsius and pH levels that would kill any normal fish within minutes. They have evolved specialized gill structures that actively pump out excess alkaline ions. Adapted, evolved, survived. Scientists have studied these extremophiles for clues about how life might survive on other planets. Because if life can exist here, in what amounts to a boiling chemical bath, then our definition of habitable needs to be completely rewritten. And the next discovery makes this look ordinary by comparison. Here is where the story takes a dark turn, because humans looked at this lake and saw something entirely different from a natural wonder. They saw profit. Profit. In 2006, the Indian industrial company Tata Chemicals proposed building a massive soda ash extraction plant on the shores of Lake Natron. Soda ash, or sodium carbonate, is used in glass manufacturing, detergents, and dozens of industrial processes. And Lake Natron has billions of tons of it just sitting there. They wanted to mine the very substance that makes this ecosystem possible. The plan would have involved pumping water from the lake, processing it in a chemical plant, and dumping the byproducts back into the surrounding area. Environmental scientists immediately raised the alarm. The construction activity, the noise, the pollution, the disruption to water flow patterns, all of it would devastate the flamingo breeding grounds. We do not inherit the earth from our ancestors. We borrow it from our children. Remember, this one lake accounts for 75% of all lesser flamingo births on the planet. Mining vs. nature. Lose this breeding ground and you do not just hurt a population. You potentially collapse an entire species. The backlash was fierce, but the threat has never fully gone away. And what happened next reveals something uncomfortable about how we value nature. But there is a piece most people never discover. Even without the mining, Lake Natron is under siege from something far harder to stop. The climate is changing faster than anything can adapt. Over the past 2 decades, researchers have documented troubling changes at the lake. Rising temperatures in the region are accelerating evaporation rates. Less rainfall means less water flowing into the lake from its tributaries. The lake is shrinking, and as it shrinks, the chemical concentration increases even further. What was already extreme is becoming even more extreme. For the flamingos, this is catastrophic. Higher concentrations mean the salt crusts where they build their nests become more unstable. Chicks that wander too far from the nest encounter water so caustic it can strip the scales from their legs within minutes. Some researchers have found dead flamingo chicks with thick rings of crystallized sodium carbonate around their legs, like shackles made of salt. The irony is devastating. The very chemistry that protects them from predators is now being amplified to levels that threaten their own survival. Too hot, too toxic. And this is not a distant future problem. This is happening right now, which brings us to the most shocking revelation of all. This is the one that kept me up at night. Remember at the beginning when I said the thing that makes this lake a graveyard is the same thing that makes it one of the most important ecosystems in Africa? Here is the full picture. Paradox. The sodium carbonate that calcifies dead animals is the same compound that feeds the cyanobacteria. The cyanobacteria are what the flamingos eat. The flamingos are what keep this ecosystem functioning. And the extreme toxicity is what keeps predators out, allowing the flamingos to breed safely. 1. Sodium carbonate kills intruders. 2. Same compound feeds the bacteria. 3. Bacteria feeds the flamingos. 4. Toxicity protects the nests. Remove any single element, and the entire system collapses. This is not just a dangerous lake. It is one of the most perfectly balanced ecosystems ever discovered. Death and life, poison and nourishment, destruction and creation, all running on the same chemical engine. Scientists call it a coupled extremophile system. I call it proof that nature is far more intelligent than we give it credit for. Look deep into nature, and then you will understand everything better. Death equals life. Comment which fact blew your mind the most. I bet most of you will pick the flamingo paradox. Send this to someone who needs to see that the most dangerous places can also be the most vital. And this is where it gets truly profound. Lake Natron is not just a geological curiosity or a viral photograph of a calcified bird. It is a mirror, a reminder that the most dangerous things in nature are often the most essential. We live in a world that tries to eliminate danger, sanitize risk, and remove anything uncomfortable. But Lake Natron teaches us that destruction and creation are not opposites, they are partners. The poison protects the nursery. The death feeds the living. The danger preserves the beauty. Without the alkaline death, there would be no flamingo life. And right now, as we change the climate and eye the minerals beneath the surface, we risk breaking a system that has balanced itself for thousands of years. not because the system is fragile, but because we do not understand what we are touching. The greatest threat to our planet is the belief that someone else will save it. Lake Natron will keep turning things to stone. The question is whether we will let it keep turning death into life as well. Danger equals beauty. If you made it this far, comment stone flamingo to prove you are among the few who truly understand that the most terrifying places on Earth are often the most alive. The truth is stranger than anything you could make up.